Have you ever, sat down for coffee with an old childhood friend?
Oh, the classic awkward coffee date.
Yeah, exactly. The one where you used to spend every single day with them, but now you realize within, I don't know, 5 minutes that you have absolutely nothing in common
Like,
anymore.
literally nothing except for those dusty old school memories.
Exactly. And welcome to today's deep dive, by the way, because today we are tackling something that is, well, it's super personal and honestly quietly painful for a lot of people.
It really is.
But it's also entirely natural, right? We're talking about the transition of adult friendships. So our mission today is to really unpack the psychology behind why we outgrow certain
And
circles.
why letting go isn't a failure. I mean, it's actually a vital step for your own personal growth.
Yeah, totally. But I want to go back to that coffee shop scenario you were just agreeing with because it's such a visceral thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It is a completely universal experience.
Mm.
You're sitting there, your coffee's getting cold, and this anxiety is just slowly creeping up your neck.
Yes, you're just scrambling for something to say.
Right, you're desperately pulling these dusty files out of your brain's cabinet, saying things like, hey, have you seen what our old math teacher is up to?
Just anything to fill the void.
Exactly, just to avoid that heavy, awkward silence that hangs in the air if you try to talk about your actual present life.
And that silence, it isn't just awkward, it feels incredibly heavy, like a subtle kind of betrayal almost.
It does. And the reason it feels that way actually comes down to a phenomenon psychologists call cognitive dissonance.
Okay, cognitive dissonance. How does that work here?
Well, you're sitting across from a face that your brain recognizes as a safe, intimate confidant, right? Your memory expects this person to completely understand your inner world.
Because they used to.
Exactly. But the reality sitting in front of you is essentially a stranger. So that mismatch the gap between your memory and reality, it triggers this deep, quiet guilt.
Like we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, we internalize that distance as a personal failure. We tell ourselves this story like, if we were real friends or, if I was a good person, we would just be close forever.
But I'm guessing that guilt is completely misplaced.
Entirely misplaced.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to explore today.
Okay, so let's unpack the mechanics of that guilt. Because to understand why we feel so terrible in that simple coffee shop, we first have to look at how we actually measure a relationship's worth.
Right.
I was looking through the notes on our sources for today, and there's this huge trap we all fall into. We basically confuse the length of a friendship with the strength of it.
Yes, that is such a crucial point.
It's like we take the sunk cost fallacy from economics and
Yeah.
we just apply it directly to human beings.
That is precisely what's happening. I mean, the sunk cost fallacy is just our brain's tendency to follow through on something simply because we've already invested time or effort into it.
Even if it's not working anymore.
Right. Even if the current costs totally outweigh the benefits. So we look at a 15-year timestamp on a friendship and think, well, I've invested too much of my life into this person to just walk away.
Right, like we'd be throwing away an investment.
Exactly. But human development doesn't operate like a financial ledger. People often enter our lives for a very specific developmental chapter.
Like high school or college.
Exactly. They're there to help you survive, say, the intense insecurity of high school, or to navigate the chaos of your university years, or even just to trauma bond over your first terrible job.
Oh, wow, yeah. You bond over just being in the same place and dealing with the same immediate struggles.
You do. But when that specific chapter naturally ends, the foundation of the connection changes.
Because you're changing.
Exactly. Your values mature, your long-term goals crystallize, and your entire psychological mindset shifts. You simply outgrow the container that the friendship used to live in.
Okay, but wait, I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because society really drills a completely different message into us, doesn't it? Isn't loyalty considered a core virtue?
It definitely is.
So if we just abandon people the second we feel we've, outgrown them, aren't we treating human beings like disposable commodities? I mean, doesn't it inherently feel like we are just abandoning ship because the weather changed?
That is a fantastic pushback.
Yeah.
And it really gets to the heart of why this whole process is so incredibly difficult for us. We have to separate true loyalty from unconditional access.
Loyalty versus unconditional access. Okay, break that down for me.
So loyalty is honoring the past, right? It's being grateful for the support that person gave you when you needed it. It might even mean being there for them in an absolute crisis.
Right.
But loyalty does not mean you are contractually obligated to sacrifice your present growth just to maintain a dynamic that no longer fits.
Oh, that's a big distinction.
It is. Treating someone as disposable means you never cared for their humanity. But recognizing that a dynamic has run its course, that's actually an act of deep mutual respect.
Because you're not faking it anymore.
Exactly. It's acknowledging that neither of you should have to perform this fake version of yourselves just to keep a timestamp alive.
Wow, that distinction between loyalty and unconditional access is huge. Because if you refuse to accept that you've outgrown the connection, you just end up exhausting yourself.
You really do.
There's this vivid, honestly, kind of painful analogy I found in the source material. It says, clinging to these outgrown relationships is like a gardener desperately watering a dead plant.
Oh, that's such a powerful image.
Right. You are just standing there, pouring your limited energy onto dry dirt, hoping it will miraculously bloom into what it was 10 years ago.
And think about the emotional toll of that. When you are watering a dead plant, you are engaging in something called identity foreclosure.
Identity foreclosure, what does that mean in this context?
It basically means you are forcing yourself to shrink back into the person you were at 16 or 22 just to make the other person comfortable.
Oh, wow. So you're literally stifling who you are now?
Exactly. Trying to force a connection that has fundamentally run its course drains your spirit because your brain is working overtime to suppress your authentic current self.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Letting go isn't about assigning blame. It isn't about saying, well, I am good and evolved and you are bad and stagnant.
So if it's not about fault and it's not some malicious betrayal, how does a 15-year friendship actually end?
That's the tricky part.
Because with romantic relationships, there's usually a clear breaking point, right? A massive fight, someone cheats, or a sit-down conversation where someone literally says, it's not you, it's me.
But friend breakups don't really have a culturally accepted script.
No, they don't. Which is why they so often fall into the category of ambiguous loss.
Ambiguous loss, meaning there's no real closure.
Exactly. There's no closure, no final screaming match, and definitely no official breakup text. Instead, it's more about the natural elements. And that brings us to the core metaphor of our deep dive today, the melting snow.
Yes, the melting snow. I love this part. All right, so think of building a friendship like packing a snowball. Every single text message you send, every shared laugh, every quick phone call, every time you show up for their birthday, it's all like packing a little bit more snow into this snowball.
Okay.
If you both keep putting energy in, keeping it warm with your attention, it grows into this solid, enduring thing.
But if you just leave that snowball alone in the cold...
It totally melts.
Right. Without that active warmth and constant communication, the structure just degrades.
Precisely. This is the biological and psychological reality of drifting. It's not a conscious attack on the other person. It's literally just the physics of human connection.
And there's a fascinating neurological reason for this too, right?
Yeah.
In the sources, they refer to Dunbar's number.
Yes. Dunbar's number is so relevant here. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that the human neocortex is only large enough to maintain about 150 stable social relationships.
Which honestly sounds like a lot, but...
It is, but more importantly, our inner circle, the people we dedicate deep, heavy emotional bandwidth to, is limited to about 5 people.
Only 5.
Just 5. We literally do not have the cognitive capacity to keep every single snowball from melting. So as you enter new chapters and meet new people who align with your current values, your brain just has to reallocate that warmth.
Wow, so it's an actual biological bandwidth issue, not a moral failing.
Exactly.
I really love this framing because it completely removes the tragedy from the situation. When you realize it's just a reallocation of limited cognitive warmth, the drift makes total sense.
It does. It takes the sting out of it.
Yeah, because it's not a massive fight. It's just delayed text replies. It's realizing it's been 3 months since you grabbed coffee, and honestly, neither of you is particularly devastated by that fact.
Right.
So how does viewing this as the weather of life, rather than some catastrophic loss, change how we actually process it emotionally?
Well, it changes the emotional processing from resentment to peaceful acceptance. You see, when the brain doesn't have a clear reason for a breakup, it usually invents a villain to protect your ego.
Oh, totally. We tell ourselves they're a bad friend for not texting me back.
Exactly. But when you accept the melting snow metaphor, you stop looking for a villain. You realize the snow is melting simply because you are both growing in different directions.
You don't have to be angry at the snow for melting.
Exactly. And you don't have to be angry at a friend for drifting. You can just appreciate the snowman you built together in the past while acknowledging that the seasons have changed.
Okay, here's where we really need to dig deeper, though. Because if we accept that this drift is natural and that the seasons change, we then have to take a hard look at the environment we are currently choosing.
Right, the environment is key.
We have to figure out what kind of season we actually want to live in. If we move from the weather of life to the soil of life, how do we know if we are growing in the right place?
This is where we look at social contagion.
Social contagion.
Yeah, think about personal growth like a biological plant. A plant's ability to thrive is almost entirely dependent on the nutritional quality of the soil it's planted in. Well, humans operate the exact same way through neurological mirroring. We subconsciously absorb the habits, the stress levels, the baseline anxieties, and the mindsets of our closest circle.
So if your soil is toxic,
Exactly. If you hang around people who constantly complain, who are highly cynical, or who subtly judge your ambitions, you are actively planting your potential in toxic soil.
which brings up that famous concept from the sources. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes, that one.
It's not just some cheesy motivational poster, is it? It's tied right back to that inner circle capacity you mentioned with Dunbar's number.
Exactly. The people occupying those 5 inner circle slots dictate your baseline reality. Let's look at a highly practical example of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine you decide you want to learn a new language, or maybe you're trying to pivot to a completely new career path. You are really putting in the effort, you're practicing, maybe you're fumbling through conversations with a terrible accent, but instead of supporting you, your current social circle laughs at your mistakes. They tease your accent. They make little passive-aggressive comments about how you think you're too good for the groove now.
Oof. That is such a uniquely painful experience because to try something new like that, you have to be so incredibly vulnerable.
You really do.
You are essentially taking off your armor and saying, hey, I'm bad at this, but I want to get better. And to have your closest friends poke at that exposed nerve, why do they do that? Why do old friends suddenly become the biggest critics of our new goals?
It's sad, but it rarely comes from a place of intentional malice. It actually comes from the psychology of group homeostasis.
Group homeostasis, what does that look like in practice?
Well, every social group develops an equilibrium, right? A set of unspoken rules about who plays what role. When you suddenly decide to grow or improve or just change your habits, you threaten that equilibrium.
You're rocking the boat.
Exactly. And more importantly, your growth acts as a mirror, reflecting their own stagnation back at them. Yeah. If you start waking up at 6 a.m. to study a language, it forces them to ask why they are still sleeping in and doing the exact same things they did 5 years ago. So their teasing is actually a psychological threat response.
So they're trying to pull you down.
They are trying to pull you back down into the familiar soil because it makes them feel safe.
That makes so much sense. It's basically a defensive reflex to protect their own ego. But, understanding that mechanism brings up a really tough practical dilemma.
Which is?
If we realize our friends are acting as toxic soil, even if it's just out of their own insecurity, how do we protect our growth? Like, do we have to send a dramatic burning bridges breakup text? Do we aggressively cut them off to protect our inner circle?
That is the instinct for a lot of people when they first learn about boundary setting, but the answer is a resounding no.
Really? No confrontation?
No, dramatic arguments usually just drain more of your energy. Remember the mechanics of the melting snow. You don't have to declare war on the winter. You just stop going outside without a coat. In psychological terms, you just quietly reallocate your energy. We all have a finite willpower battery every single day. Fighting with toxic friends drains that battery.
So you just step back.
Exactly. Instead of arguing, you simply reduce the frequency of contact. You actively choose to seek out positive, supportive people, new soil, who cheer for you and make you feel safe to practice and be vulnerable.
You let the old snowball melt.
Yes. You just let the old snowball melt on its own while you build a new one in better conditions.
Okay, but let's talk about the immediate aftermath of that quiet retreat. Because quietly stepping away from that toxic soil naturally creates a vacuum in your life.
It definitely does.
You suddenly have empty weekends, your phone isn't buzzing with group chats, and frankly, that void can feel terrifying.
Oh, it is terrifying because the human brain absolutely hates a vacuum. We're social creatures, we're wired for connection, but that vacuum leads us to the final and perhaps most crucial mindset shift.
Which is?
Viewing this empty space not as a failure or a period of isolation, but as a strict redirection.
Redirection. I really like that word. It implies that the road hasn't ended. You've just taken an exit.
Exactly. When a friendship drifts and that space opens up, it is life's way of forcing neuroplasticity. It forces you to form new habits, seek out new communities, and explore parts of your identity that were totally suppressed by your old circle.
There's an incredible visual for this from the source material that I just can't stop thinking about.
The suitcase metaphor.
Yes. Imagine that your emotional capacity is a suitcase, or, even just your own two hands.
Right.
If your hands are completely, entirely full of old things that no longer bring you peace, like old relationships you're maintaining out of guilt, or old conversations that drain your willpower battery, old habits tied to people you've outgrown, you literally have no hands left to grasp anything new.
That is so true.
You cannot grab onto new connections or new mentors or new experiences that could actually heal you because you are white-knuckling a dead plant.
It's the ultimate lesson in opportunity cost. Every single hour you spend trying to maintain a draining, outgrown friendship is an hour you cannot spend finding the people who align perfectly with your current values.
Yeah, it's just lost time.
Exactly. You cannot catch what is meant for your future if your fists are permanently clenched around your past. Letting go is the physical and emotional mechanism that actually creates the capacity for redirection.
But again, the societal pressure against this is massive. If you pull away from an old friend group, mutual acquaintances might call you cold or selfish, or they'll say, oh, you've changed.
Oh, they definitely will say you've changed.
So how can someone listening right now remain deeply grounded? And by that, I mean, how do they stay calm and confident in their own values when the people around them are making them feel guilty for making space in their suitcase?
Remaining grounded in the face of that external judgment requires a fundamental shift in how you define self-respect.
Self-respect over social pleasing.
Exactly. You have to realize that managing your environment, curating your soil, is not a selfish act. It is the baseline requirement for maturity.
Wow. Baseline requirement.
Yes. When you keep your boundaries clear and step away from dynamics that drain you, you aren't rejecting someone maliciously. You are simply refusing to let your potential be compromised by someone else's comfort zone.
That is perfectly said.
And doing so allows you to truly savor your present connections. You can walk your own path with pride, fully grounded in the knowledge that you are responsible for your own psychological health.
So let's bring this all together for the listener right now, because we have covered a lot of psychological ground today.
We really have.
We started in that deeply uncomfortable coffee shop, suffocating under the heavy cognitive dissonance of looking at an old friend and just having absolutely nothing to say.
And we unpacked how that guilt is directly tied to the sunk cost fallacy, our flawed tendency to confuse the sheer longevity of a relationship with its actual present-day compatibility.
Right. We explored the developmental reality that it is perfectly normal and honestly even required to outgrow people as your life chapters turn.
We looked at the science of drifting the melting snow, the realization that, thanks to Dunbar's number and our limited cognitive bandwidth, a relationship fading isn't some tragic betrayal.
It's just the natural reallocation of emotional warmth,
Yeah.
the weather of life.
Exactly. Then we talked about the profound importance of your soil. We explored how the psychology of group homeostasis can cause old friends to literally mock your new ambitions, and why you absolutely must protect your vulnerability by stepping back from people who drain your willpower battery.
And finally, we reframed the terrifying void of a fading friendship as a necessary redirection, because the opportunity cost of holding on to the past means your hands are just too full to catch the future.
Right. You have to empty your suitcase to make space for the connections that actually align with who you are today.
Exactly. So the ultimate takeaway from all this research is a direct reminder to you, the listener. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to let the snow melt.
Absolutely.
And you are allowed to let go of what drains you without carrying a single ounce of guilt.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I actually want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building one last time on that snowball metaphor.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've spent this entire time analyzing the friendships that are fading, right? The snow that is melting out in the cold. But what happens when we flip the lens and look at our current, closest relationships right now? The ones occupying those 5 precious slots in your inner circle.
Oh, that's where the real work is.
Exactly. If friendships are like snowballs that require active warmth, deliberate text messages, shared experiences, and vulnerable conversations to survive the elements, well, take a hard look at the people who are acting as rich soil for you right now.
The ones showing up for you today.
Right. Are you actively packing snow and providing warmth to those vital people who truly support your growth? Or are you taking them for granted, just assuming those beautiful connections will survive the winter entirely on their own?
Man, that is a phenomenal question to carry with you today. Are you maintaining the soil that's actually feeding you?
It's so important to ask.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go pack some snow for the people who matter. Give yourself permission to let the rest melt. And we will catch you next time.